Genius teen thwarts digital theft at company. Boss couldn't believe his eyes. Richard Johnson had been cleaning the company's hallways for 15 years, always with the same care and dedication he showed at home while raising his only son. His night shift as a janitor supported their modest but dignified family, while his wife Linda sewed during the day to supplement their income. It was during the school break that everything changed. Their 17-year-old son, Michael, had started accompanying him some nights at the company, using his free time to study programming on the reception computer. The boy had always had a knack for technology, but that Tuesday in January, he discovered something that would make his head spin. "Dad, there's something strange going on here," Michael said, pointing at the computer screen at 2 in the morning. Richard stopped mopping the floor and walked over. On the screen, numbers and codes he couldn't make sense of flashed in seemingly random sequences. "What is this, son?" "I was trying to understand the company's system to learn more about programming, and I found these weird transfers," Michael explained, his eyes shining with excitement. "Look, every week small amounts leave the main accounts but not to known suppliers." Richard felt a chill in his stomach. He knew they shouldn't be messing with the company's computer, least of all his son. "Michael, you can't go digging into these things. If someone finds out, I could lose my job." "But Dad, this isn't normal. These companies receiving the payments, some of them don't even exist. I checked public records." The boy had always had a natural curiosity for systems. Linda often said he was born with a gift for understanding machines, from the old radio he fixed at 12 to the neighbor's phone he recovered after everyone else had given up. "Let's get out of here," Richard said nervously. "You can't touch that computer anymore." But Michael had already written everything down in a notebook. Over the next few days, he became obsessed with those numbers. At night, while Richard worked, the boy pored over the papers, making calculations. Linda noticed the change in her son's behavior. He barely ate, slept little, and was always scribbling numbers on any scrap of paper he found. "Richard, what's going on with our boy?" she asked worriedly as she made breakfast. "He found some irregularities at the company. I'm scared, Linda. If anyone finds out he was on that computer..." "What kind of irregularities?" Richard told her everything. Linda, a wise woman who had spent her life observing people and situations, immediately understood the gravity of it. "Richard, if money is disappearing from the company, it's not our problem. We're honest people, but we can't get involved in this." That's exactly what I told him. But Michael couldn't forget what he'd found. Over the next week, he kept investigating on his own, using the school's internet and even the public library to research the shell companies. What he discovered shocked him even more. It wasn't just a few small transfers. The scheme was much bigger than he'd first thought. Someone was systematically siphoning money, and the amounts were staggering. By Friday, Michael made a decision that would change everything. He decided he had to tell someone at the company, even if it meant risking his father's job. "Mom, I need to do what's right," he told Linda as she sewed a skirt at the kitchen table. "Michael, your father could lose his job. We're a simple family. We can't go up against powerful people. But Mom, the money being stolen, it's the employees' money too. The retirement fund, the benefits, all of it is being embezzled. Dad worked 15 years at this company. Is it fair that he gets robbed too?" Linda stopped sewing. The simplicity and honesty with which her son presented the issue made her rethink. She had always taught Michael to do what was right, no matter the consequences. "What do you plan to do?" "I'm going to talk to the company director." "Michael, you're just a 17-year-old boy. Who's going to take you seriously?" "The evidence will speak for me, Mom." That night, Michael went with his father to the company once more, but this time, it wasn't to study. It was to gather the last pieces of evidence he needed. Richard noticed his son was different, more determined, but also more worried. "Son, are you still thinking about that nonsense?" "It's not nonsense, Dad. I found out the person behind this is someone very close to the director. That's why no one ever suspected." "What do you mean?" Michael showed his father a spreadsheet he had created manually, correlating dates, amounts, and patterns. "Look here, Dad. The embezzlement always happens when only one specific person is working in the system, and that person has full access to the approval codes." Richard stared at the numbers without fully understanding, but the organization and logic of his son's work impressed him. Who is this person? Andrew Peterson, the technology supervisor. Richard knew Andrew, a seemingly respectable man, always well-dressed, who greeted every employee warmly. He had worked at the company for 8 years and was considered a key figure in the tech department. Michael, are you sure about this? Dad, numbers don't lie, and there's more. I found out he set up shell companies in the names of distant relatives. The transfers always go to those companies. Richard felt his legs tremble. If his son was right, they were dealing with something very serious. But if he was wrong, the consequences could be disastrous for the family. What are we going to do, son? Tomorrow morning, I'm going to talk to Director Henry Williams. Michael, you can't just walk in there and accuse an important employee of theft. That's why I organized everything properly. I have proof, Dad. It's not just suspicion. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. On Monday morning, Michael wore his best outfit, a clean pair of jeans and a shirt Linda had ironed especially for the occasion. He carried his father's old briefcase with all the documents he had organized. Richard hadn't slept all night. He left for work that morning with a heavy heart, knowing that when he returned, his family's life might have changed completely. Linda spent the whole morning praying and nervously sewing, losing focus every minute. Michael arrived at the company at 9 in the morning. The receptionist, Mrs. Margaret, a 60-year-old woman who had always treated Richard kindly, was surprised to see the boy. Michael, what are you doing here at this hour? Is your father okay? Good morning, Mrs. Margaret. I need to speak with Director Henry Williams. It's very important. Son, Mr. Henry is a very busy man. You can't just walk in here expecting to talk to him. Mrs. Margaret, it's about something I discovered at the company, something that could be hurting all the employees, including my dad. The sincerity in the boy's voice touched the receptionist's heart. She had known Michael since he was little, when he sometimes came to pick up Richard after work. Wait here, I'll see if I can reach him. Margaret called the director's secretary, explaining the situation delicately. Henry Williams, the company director for 12 years, initially resisted the idea of meeting with a teenager without an appointment. Mrs. Margaret, I can't just see anyone who shows up here. I have important meetings today. Dr. Henry, it's Richard's son, our janitor. The boy seems very worried. He says he's discovered something important about the company. Henry sighed. Richard was an exemplary employee who had never caused any problems. Maybe 5 minutes wouldn't hurt. All right, but only 5 minutes. When Michael entered the director's office, his nerves nearly got the best of him. The room was intimidating, spacious with a mahogany desk, shelves full of books and diplomas lining the walls. Henry Williams, a 45-year-old man with graying hair and a stern expression, barely looked up from his papers when Michael walked in. Have a seat. You have 5 minutes to tell me what you want. Michael took a deep breath and opened his folder. Sir, I've discovered someone is embezzling money from the company through the digital system. Henry finally looked up, his expression a mix of surprise and skepticism. What do you mean? I have all the evidence here. Irregular transfers, shell companies, timing patterns, everything documented. Michael began spreading the papers across the desk. Henry observed the meticulous organization of the documents and was impressed by the level of detail. Where did you get this information? I was studying programming on the reception computer during vacation when my father worked nights. I noticed these strange transfers and started investigating. Did you hack into our system? No, sir. I only used the screens that were left open and did public research on the companies receiving the payments. Henry began examining the documents more closely. The numbers were staggering and the patterns were undeniable. This is very serious, young man. If this is true. It is true, sir. And there's more. I've identified who's behind it. Who? Andrew Peterson, from the technology department. Henry's expression changed completely. Andrew was one of his trusted employees, responsible for several improvements to the company's system. Are you sure about this? I am, sir. All the discrepancies occur when only he is logged into the system, and the companies receiving the money are registered under his relatives' names. Henry picked up the phone and called his secretary. Teresa, cancel all my meetings this morning and ask Andrew to come here immediately. While they waited, Henry asked Michael several questions, testing the consistency of his findings. He was impressed by the boy's intelligence and determination. "Why did you decide to tell me this? Did you know it could cause trouble for your father?" "Sir, my father always taught me to do what's right. And what's happening here isn't right. It's not fair to honest employees like him." 15 minutes later, Andrew Peterson entered the room. He was a 35-year-old man, always well-groomed, with a smile that won anyone's trust. "Good morning, Dr. Henry." Teresa said it was urgent. "Andrew, this is Michael, Richard's son from maintenance." Andrew greeted the boy politely, but Michael noticed a strange glint in his eyes when he was introduced. "Michael has made some interesting discoveries about our system," Henry continued. "What kind of discoveries?" Michael took a deep breath and began explaining everything again, showing the documents. With every word, he noticed Andrew growing tenser, though he tried to maintain his composure. "This is very strange," Andrew said. "Where did this information come from?" "From the company's own system," Michael replied. "Impossible. Our system is secure, unless someone illegally hacked into it. I didn't hack anything. I just observed the open screens and did public research." Andrew looked at Henry with a worried expression. "Dr. Henry, I think we have a case of system intrusion here. Maybe we should call security to investigate how this boy accessed confidential information." Michael felt his heart race. Andrew was trying to turn the tables, making him look like a suspect instead of a whistleblower. "Mr. Director," Michael said, keeping his voice steady, "I can prove everything I'm saying. I can even show how the transfers are made." "How so?" Henry asked. "If you'll allow me, I can access the system right now and show exactly where the irregularities are." Andrew tried to intervene. "Dr. Henry, I don't think it's wise to let a minor tamper with our system. It could cause irreversible damage." But Henry was curious. Something about Michael's confidence impressed him, contrasting with Andrew's growing nervousness. "All right, Michael, show me." Henry turned on his computer and let Michael access the system. The boy navigated with impressive ease, finding exactly the screens he'd studied for weeks. "Look here, Mr. Director. This is the automatic transfers screen. See these companies?" Michael pointed to the screen. "They don't actually exist." "How do you know that?" "I researched government websites. Look here." Michael opened another browser window showing the official records. "This company was created just 6 months ago, but it's been receiving payments from our company for 2 years. Andrew was visibly nervous now. "Dr. Henry, this could just be a system error. These things happen." "An error that repeats systematically for 2 years?" Michael questioned. "And always at the same times when only one person is logged into the system?" Henry looked straight at Andrew. "Andrew, can you explain this?" "Dr. Henry, I think there's a misunderstanding here. Maybe we should call our audit team to investigate properly." "Maybe we should," Henry agreed, picking up the phone. The tension in the room was palpable. Michael felt he'd done his part, but now everything depended on how the director would react to the evidence. "Dr. Henry," Michael said, "can I show you one more thing?" "What?" "The transfers always happen on Thursdays, between 2 and 3 in the morning, exactly when only one specific person has access to the system." Michael showed the system login records. Henry checked the data and was shocked to see the pattern was undeniable. "Andrew, were you logged into the system at these times?" "I sometimes stay late fixing issues." "It's normal." "Fixing what kind of issues?" Andrew hesitated. Michael seized the moment of silence to show one more piece of evidence. "Mr. Director, there's something even more important. The money being diverted, a part of it comes from the employee's retirement fund." Henry turned pale. "What do you mean?" "Look at these records. Small amounts are deducted from each contribution and transferred to these shell companies. The employees don't even know they're being robbed." The revelation hit Henry like a punch to the gut. If this was true, he'd failed to protect his most dedicated employees. Andrew played his last card. "Dr. Henry, this boy clearly hacked our system. How else could he have access to this information? Maybe we should consider he planted this evidence himself." Michael looked straight at Andrew. "If I planted the evidence, how do you explain the companies being registered in your relatives' names?" Mary Margaret Peterson is your aunt, isn't she? Andrew paled. How had this boy found that out? And Charles Edward Peterson is your cousin. Both registered companies that never operated, but receive money from our company regularly. Henry looked at Andrew with an expression of complete disappointment. Andrew, is this true? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. The silence in the room lasted only a few seconds, but felt like an eternity. Andrew glanced around, clearly searching for a way out. Dr. Henry, I can explain, then explain. It was just an initial mistake that got complicated. I was testing the system and accidentally created these transfers. By the time I realized it was too tangled to undo, Michael couldn't believe what he was hearing. Mr. Andrew, testing the system for 2 years, and coincidentally, always sending money to your relatives' companies. Michael, you don't understand how these things work. Systems are complex. Oh, I understand. And I also understand you wrote specific code to split the transfers into small amounts to avoid raising red flags. Henry asked Michael to show him that part. The boy navigated the system and found lines of code clearly inserted to automate the diversions. Andrew, did you write this? Andrew could no longer deny it. His expression shifted from nervousness to resignation. Dr. Henry, I can pay it all back. It was a moment of weakness. My family was struggling financially. How much did you take? Michael had calculated everything. Over the last 2 years, roughly 800,000 reais. Henry was stunned by the amount. For a mid-sized company like his, it was a significant blow. And how much of that came from the employee fund? About 300,000 reais, Michael replied, checking his notes. Henry felt a mix of anger and sadness. Employees like Richard had contributed honestly to a fund that was being stolen. Andrew, you're fired, and I'll need to report this to the authorities. Dr. Henry, please, I can return everything. My family... You should have thought of your family before stealing from others. Andrew left the room with his head down. Henry stayed alone with Michael, trying to process everything. Michael, what you did today was extraordinary. But why didn't you tell your father first? I did, sir. He was afraid of losing his job. My mother too, but I knew if I did nothing, you'd keep being robbed. Henry was moved by the boy's maturity. You saved this company, Michael, and the future of many employees. I just did what I thought was right, sir. And what do you plan to do now? Finish school? Yes, sir, I want to study computer science at the university, but my family can't afford it. Henry thought for a few minutes. This boy had shown not just exceptional intelligence, but also character and courage. Michael, how about the company offers you a scholarship? Michael's eyes lit up. You'd do that? I would, and more. How about a paid internship here while you study? Michael could hardly believe his ears. But I'm only 17, and you've already proven more capable than many seasoned professionals. Henry picked up the phone and called reception. Mrs. Margaret, could you ask Richard to come here? Yes, I know he works nights, but it's important. Tell him it's about Michael, but everything's fine. An hour later, Richard rushed into the company, frantic. He'd left his day job in a hurry, imagining the worst. When he entered the director's office and saw Michael sitting calmly, he let out a sigh of relief. Dr. Henry, I apologize for my son. If he did anything wrong... Richard, sit down. Your son did nothing wrong. Quite the opposite. Henry told Richard the whole story. With each word, Michael's father grew more shocked and proud at the same time. My son uncovered all this? He did, Richard. And thanks to him, we recovered almost all the embezzled money, including the retirement fund. Richard looked at Michael with tears in his eyes. Son, you did this even knowing I could lose my job? Dad, you always taught me that doing what's right sometimes hurts, but it's always the best choice. Henry watched the exchange, moved. Rarely had he witnessed such a beautiful bond between father and son. Richard, I need to apologize to you. Apologize, Dr. Henry? You've worked here for 15 years, always an exemplary employee, and I never gave you the respect you deserve. I never took the time to talk to you, to really know you. Richard was speechless. Dr. Henry, I'm just a janitor. You're not just a janitor, Richard. You're an honest man who raised an extraordinary son. And that says everything about who you are. Sir, Richard, I'd like to offer you a promotion. How about supervising the entire custodial team, with a salary to match the responsibility, of course? Richard couldn't hold back his tears. Dr. Henry, I don't know what to say. And for Michael, I'm offering a full scholarship for computer science plus a paid internship here. Michael stood and hugged his father. Richard wept, still trying to process everything. Dad, we did it, Michael whispered. No, son, you did it. You made this happen. We did it, Dad. You taught me the courage to do what's right. Henry watched their embrace, feeling he'd learned a valuable lesson that day. Richard, Michael, you taught me something important today. About honesty, about courage, about doing what's right even when it's hard. Dr. Henry, we're the ones who should thank you for the opportunity, Richard said, still emotional. Starting today, things will be different here. I'll implement a direct communication program with all employees. I want to know the people who make this company run. Michael had an idea. Director, may I suggest something? Of course, Michael. What about creating a system where employees can report issues anonymously? That way, if something like this happens again, it'll be easier to uncover. Brilliant idea. Would you help me develop it? It'd be an honor, sir. Henry shook both their hands. Richard, Michael, you've transformed this company today, and you've changed my perspective on what truly matters. Dr. Henry, Richard said, may I ask one thing? Of course. What will happen to Andrew? He'll face the consequences of his actions, but the important thing is we recovered nearly all the money and protected the other employees. Michael remembered something. Director, there's one more thing I'd like to ask. What is it? Could you explain to everyone what happened? I think they deserve to know they were protected. You're right, Michael. I'll hold a company-wide meeting this week. Richard looked at his son with boundless pride. Dr. Henry, I don't know how to thank you for this opportunity. Richard, it's your family who deserves thanks. You reminded me what truly matters in a company. It's people. At the meeting 3 days later, Henry shared the full story. The reaction was shock at first, followed by admiration for Michael and gratitude for Richard. Margaret, the receptionist, cried when she learned that her retirement fund had been protected thanks to the courage of her co-worker's son. Michael, she said after the meeting, you saved our future, young man. Margaret, I just did what anyone should have done. No, son. Many would have turned a blind eye, afraid of the consequences. You had courage. In the following months, Michael began his university studies while working part-time at the company. His first task was to develop the anonymous reporting system he had suggested. Richard adjusted quickly to his new role as supervisor. His 15 years of experience and respectful relationship with all the employees made him a natural leader. Linda, who had spent weeks worried about the consequences of her son's discoveries, now felt proud seeing how everything had turned out positively. Michael, she said one evening as he studied at the kitchen table, I'm so proud of you. Mum, I just did what you and Dad taught me. Son, teaching is easy. The hard part is having the courage to act on those lessons when it might cause trouble. Mum, you and Dad always said doing the right thing can be tough, but it's always worth it. You were right. Michael's story quickly spread throughout the area. Other companies began reaching out to Henry to learn how to implement similar fraud protection systems. Michael became something of a local celebrity, but always kept the humility he'd learned at home. Doctor, Henry, he said one day, I think the most important part of all this wasn't uncovering the fraud. What was it then? It was learning that when we do what's right, even when we're scared, things work out in ways we never imagined. Henry smiled. That young man still surprised him with his wisdom. Michael, do you have plans for the future? Yes, sir. I want to graduate, work in technology, but always remember that people matter most. What about the company? Do you plan to stay here after graduation? If you'll have me, it'd be an honor. Michael, after all you've done for us, this company will always have a place for you. 2 years later, Michael was in his third semester of computer science and had already developed several important systems for the company. His reputation as an ethical and skilled programmer was known throughout the region. Richard had become one of the most respected supervisors in the company. His promotion hadn't changed his humility, but it had boosted his confidence and self-esteem. Linda still sewed, but now for pleasure, not necessity. The family's financial stability had improved significantly. "Richard," Henry said one afternoon, "I want to ask you a personal question." "Of course, Dr. Henry." "How did you raise such a special son?" Richard thought for a moment. "Dr. Henry, I think it was by always treating him like a person, explaining things, talking, showing him that honesty and hard work are the most important values, and you were never afraid he'd want more than you could give." "I was always afraid, yes, but Linda used to say, if we teach the right values, life takes care of the rest." "Your wife is a wise woman." "She is, Dr. Henry, and Michael was always a special boy. Even as a child, he wanted to understand how things worked, always wanted to help." Henry reflected on the conversation. He had learned so much from that simple family about what truly matters. The company thrived in the following years. The anonymous reporting system Michael developed helped prevent further issues, and the culture of transparency Henry implemented attracted increasingly skilled and dedicated employees. Michael graduated with honors and, as he had promised, continued working at the company, but now as the technology coordinator, a position that had been restructured after the Andrew case. At his graduation, the entire company was present. Henry made sure to give a speech. "Michael, when you walked into my office that morning 4 years ago, I thought I was wasting my time. Today I know it was the most important moment in this company's history." Michael was moved but kept his composure. "Director, I want to thank you for giving me the chance to prove that doing the right thing always pays off." "Michael, you proved more than that. You proved that age doesn't determine ability, that background doesn't determine destiny, and that honesty is the greatest value a person can have." Richard and Linda were in the front row, crying with pride. Seeing their son graduated, respected, and still holding on to the values they had taught him was the fulfillment of all their dreams. "Son," Linda said after the ceremony, "remember when you were little and always asked why you had to study?" "I do, Mom." "Now you know the answer." "Yes, I do, Mom. To be able to help others and make a difference in the world." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. 5 years after the Andrew case, the company had become a regional benchmark for ethics and transparency. Michael, now 22, had developed digital security systems for several companies in the area. But what made him proudest wasn't his professional success, it was the impact his story had on others. "Michael," said Mrs. Margaret, who now worked part-time but still stayed with the company, "you know you've inspired a lot of people, right?" "How so, Mrs. Margaret?" "Last week, Anthony's daughter from maintenance told me she decided to study programming because of you." "That's wonderful, Mrs. Margaret. And it's not just her. There are so many young people around here who look at you and see that it's possible to succeed in life by being honest." Michael was touched by the receptionist's words. "Mrs. Margaret, I just did what anyone should do." "Oh, Michael, you still don't get it, do you? What you did isn't what just anyone would do. What you did is what everyone should do. It's different." That night, Michael talked to his parents about his conversation with Mrs. Margaret. "Dad, Mum, do you think our story really inspires others?" Richard smiled. "Son, just yesterday, John from the market asked me how we raised you, said he wants to raise his grandkids the same way. And Mrs. Rose, my neighbor," Linda added, "always asks about you. Says you're an example for the whole community." Michael reflected on this. He'd never thought of himself as a role model. "Dad, Mom, sometimes I wonder if I made the right decision that day." "Why, son?" Linda asked, concerned. "No, Mom, it's not regret. It's just that sometimes I wonder if it wasn't just luck that everything worked out." Richard looked at his son seriously. "Michael, it wasn't luck. It was consequence." "What do you mean, Dad?" "Son, when we do what's right, no matter how scary, things have a way of working out. Maybe not how we expect, but they always work out for the better." "Your father's right, son," Linda agreed. You did the right thing without knowing if it would work out. That's what integrity is. The conversation was interrupted by a phone call. It was Henry. Michael, sorry to call so late, but I wanted to share some news. Go ahead, Dr. Henry. Remember when you suggested creating a scholarship program for employees' children? I do. We just approved it. Starting next year, we'll be offering 5 full university scholarships. Michael was moved. Dr. Henry, this is wonderful. And there's more. Would you like to coordinate the program? It would be an honor. Michael, your story changed this company. Now I want it to change other families' lives too. After hanging up the phone, Michael shared the news with his parents. Son, said Richard, you're making other families' dreams come true, just like you did for ours. Dad, Mum, sometimes I can't believe all this started just because I wanted to do what was right. Michael, said Linda, that's the most beautiful part of your story. You didn't do it for a reward. You did it because you believed it was right. The following week, Michael began working on the scholarship program. His first task was to develop fair and transparent selection criteria. Dr. Henry, he said, I don't think the scholarships should only go to the top students. What do you mean? I think we should also give opportunities to young people who, like me, have potential but need a chance. Sometimes grades don't reflect a person's true ability. Interesting. What criteria do you suggest? Demonstrated potential, financial need, commitment to ethical values, and willingness to give back to the community. Michael, you continue to amaze me with your maturity. The program launched 3 months later. The community response was overwhelming. Hundreds of young people applied, each with a unique story of determination and dreams. Michael personally participated in every interview. Each young person reminded him of himself at 17, full of dreams, but with few resources to achieve them. Mr. Michael, asked one candidate, a 16-year-old girl whose father worked in maintenance, is it true you uncovered fraud in the company when you were young? Yes, it's true. And you weren't afraid? Michael thought about the question. I was very afraid. Afraid of hurting my father, my family. But I was even more afraid of doing nothing and seeing honest people get hurt. How did you know it was the right decision? I didn't, but my parents always taught me that when we don't know if something is right or wrong, we should ask, will this help or hurt others? If the answer is help, it's probably the right decision. The girl smiled. Thank you, Mr. Michael. You've given me an important lesson. After the interviews, Michael spoke with Henry about the candidates. Dr. Henry, all these young people remind me of myself a few years ago. How so? Full of dreams with potential but needing an opportunity. I wish I could help them all. Michael, you know we can only offer 5 scholarships for now. I know, but I was thinking, what if we gradually expand the program, adding 1 more scholarship each year? That's an interesting idea. I'll assess the financial feasibility. Michael had another idea. Dr. Henry, what if I offered free mentorship to the young people who don't get the scholarships? I could help them find other opportunities. Michael, would you really do that? Of course. Someone gave me an opportunity when I needed it. Now it's my turn to give back. The mentorship program became an even greater success than the scholarships themselves. Michael spent his weekends guiding young people interested in technology, helping them find paths to their dreams. Michael, said Richard one morning, you're working too hard, son. It's not work, Dad. It's a pleasure. I enjoy helping these people. Son, don't you think you're overdoing it? Every weekend busy with mentorship. Dad, remember when you taught me that we should give back for the good things we receive in life? I remember. That's what I'm doing. I was given an incredible opportunity. Now I want to give the same opportunity to others. Linda watched the conversation with pride. Richard, our son has grown into a good man. That's what matters. It's true, Linda. Sometimes I still can't believe everything that's happened. Michael hugged his parents. Dad, Mum, everything I am today I owe to you, the values you taught me, the example you set. Without that, nothing would have worked out. Michael, said Linda, you've changed our lives, son. No, Mom, we changed our lives together as a family. 6 months after launching the scholarship program, Michael received an unexpected invitation. A university in New York wanted him to give a talk on ethics in technology. Dr. Henry, do you think I should accept? Michael, your story could inspire so many other young people. Of course you should. But I've never given a lecture before. What if I don't know what to say? Michael, you don't need a rehearsed speech. Just tell your story. The truth always moves people. The talk was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Michael spent days preparing, but Richard gave him advice that changed his perspective. Son, you've told your story hundreds of times. To me, to your mother, to the young people you mentor. Why would this be any different? Dad, it's just... there'll be so many important people there. Michael, important or not, they're just people. And your story is about people. Speak from the heart, like you always do. On the day of the lecture, Michael was nervous but remembered his father's words. When he stepped onto the stage and saw hundreds of college students in the audience, he took a deep breath and began. My name is Michael Johnson. 5 years ago, I was a 17-year-old boy who accompanied his janitor father on night shifts. Today, I'm here to share how one difficult decision changed not just my life, but the lives of many others. For an hour, Michael told his story with simplicity and emotion. He spoke about his fears, his doubts, and the courage to do what he believed was right, even without knowing the consequences. The most important lesson I learned, he said at the end, is that doing the right thing isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing it anyway because you believe it's right. The audience sat in silence for a few seconds before erupting in applause. After the talk, several students approached him with questions and their own stories. Michael, one student said, your story made me rethink some decisions I'm facing. What kind of decisions? I discovered some irregularities at the company where I intern. I was afraid to speak up, but after hearing you, I think I know what I need to do. Michael smiled. Remember, if your decision helps others, it's probably the right one. On the way home, Michael reflected on how much his life had changed. From an insecure boy afraid of hurting his father, he'd become a role model for other young people. But what made him proudest wasn't the recognition. It was knowing his story inspired others to do what was right. Linda, Richard said that evening, did you see Michael's face when he came back from the talk? I did. He was glowing. I think he finally understands the impact he's had on people's lives. Richard, sometimes I wonder what our lives would be like if he hadn't been brave that day. They'd be very different, Linda. But what matters is that he was. And that changed everything. 2 years later, Michael had become one of the region's leading voices in digital ethics. Companies across the state sought his services to develop transparent and secure systems, but he never forgot his roots. He still lived with his parents, continued the mentorship program, and always made sure to remind everyone that it all started with simple values learned at home. Michael, said Henry in a conversation, have you ever thought about starting your own company? I have, Dr. Henry, but I think for now I can do more good by staying here. Why? Here, I can keep the scholarship and mentorship programs running. If I start my own business, I might not have time for that. Michael, you know you can take those programs wherever you go, right? I know, but this place is special. It's where everything began. It's where I can give back directly to the people who gave me the opportunity. Henry was moved by Michael's loyalty. Michael, you're a very special person. I hope you know that. Dr. Henry, I'm just a reflection of the education I received and the opportunities I was given. No, Michael. Many people get education and opportunities, but not everyone does what you've done. What makes you special is your character. That evening, Michael had dinner with his parents and told them about his conversation with Henry. Dad, Mom, sometimes I wonder if I should have bigger ambitions. What do you mean, son? Asked Linda. Everyone says I could start my own company, make a lot of money, become famous. Richard looked at his son seriously. Michael, do you want those things? I don't know, Dad. Sometimes I think I should. Son, success isn't about money or fame. Success is about making a difference in people's lives, and you do that every day. Your father's right, Linda agreed. You're living your dreams and helping others live theirs. What else matters? Michael smiled. His parents always had the wisdom to put things into perspective. You're right. I'm happy with my life. I'm doing what I love and helping others. That's real success. 3 years later, Michael turned 25. The scholarship program had already helped 15 young people, and the mentorship program had guided over 100. The company had grown significantly, always maintaining the values of transparency and ethics that Michael had helped establish. Richard had become the director of operations, a position created especially to recognize his experience and dedication. Linda had opened a small sewing workshop where she taught young people from the community. "Michael," said Margaret, who was now the reception supervisor, "you know your story has become a legend around here, right?" "What do you mean, Margaret?" "The other day, a mother brought her teenage son here just to meet you. She said she wanted him to see an example of a young man who succeeded by being honest." Michael felt embarrassed. "Margaret, I just did what anyone should do." "Michael, after all these years, you still don't get it. What you did isn't what everyone does. It's what everyone should do. And that's the difference." That afternoon, Michael received a call that would change his perspective on his story once again. "Michael, this is Professor Charles from State University. Do you remember me?" "Of course, Professor. You were in the audience at my first talk." "That's right. I'm calling to invite you. How would you like to write a book about your experience?" Michael was surprised. "A book, Professor?" "Yes. Your story needs to reach more people. It could inspire young people across the country." "Professor, I'm not a writer." "Michael, you don't need to be a writer. You just need to tell your story. We'll handle the technical part." Michael discussed the invitation with his parents. "Son," said Richard, "your story really could help a lot of people." "Dad, but writing a book, that's not for people like us." "Michael," Linda said, "you've already proven there's no such thing as people like us. There are people who do what's right and people who don't. And you always have." Michael decided to take on the challenge. For 6 months, he worked on the book with Professor Charles's help. The process of recalling every detail of the story made him reflect on how much his life had changed. The book was released a year later, titled The Courage to Do What's Right. At the launch, Michael insisted that Richard and Linda be by his side. "This book," he said during the presentation, "isn't about me. It's about the values my parents taught me and how one difficult decision can change everything." The book became an unexpected success. Thousands of young people across the country read Michael's story and felt inspired to make their own brave choices. Michael began receiving letters from readers sharing how his story had influenced important decisions in their lives. Each letter moved him and deepened his understanding of the impact of his choice that January day. "Son," Linda said, reading one of the letters, "look what this young man wrote. Michael, your story gave me the courage to report the bullying happening at my school. Thank you for teaching me that doing the right thing is worth it." Michael was emotional. "Mom, sometimes I can't believe our story reached so many people." "Our story, son, our story. Because it was our whole family that made that decision." Richard nodded. "It's true, Michael. You had the courage to act, but we gave you the support and the values. It was a family effort." In that moment, Michael fully grasped the magnitude of everything that had happened. It wasn't just about uncovering fraud. It was about a family that, faced with a difficult choice, decided to do what was right, no matter the consequences. And that choice hadn't just transformed their lives, but also the lives of hundreds of others who drew inspiration from their courage. Michael looked at his parents and smiled. "Dad, Mom, thank you for teaching me that doing the right thing is always worth it, even when it's scary." "Son," Richard said, "thank you for having the courage to put our lessons into practice when it mattered." "Michael," Linda added, "you turned our family from honest people into people who make a difference, and that's priceless." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your sincere thoughts in the comments. Do you believe Michael made the right decision? We'd love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.